The stars in the quadrant known as the dead zone did not twinkle. They held a still, cold light, like forgotten lamps in an empty room. For 3 generations, the Galactic Confederacy had known this silence. Here, the story went, humanity had died. It was called the Great Collapse. Records stated a human terraforming project on a gas giant's moon had gone catastrophically wrong. It triggered a chain reaction in the local star, forcing it into a premature and violent hypernova. The resulting shockwave wiped out every human colony in the sector. No distress calls were finished. No escape pods were ever found. The Confederacy, then in its infancy, sent rescue fleets that found only debris and eerie quiet. Humanity was declared extinct. A tragic, cautionary tale about ambition. In the capital city of Lyra Prime, a young xenolinguist named Hannah sat in the archives of Lost Voices. Her work involved studying the cultural artifacts of extinct species. Her current focus was humanity. Before her on a large display panel was a scanned image of a book, a real physical book made of paper. The text was in a language called Korean. She was trying to translate a poem. Hannah was not considered unusual for her interest, just particularly dedicated. Many beings studied the humans. They were a fascinating, short-lived species known for their powerful emotions and sudden bursts of both creativity and violence. Their disappearance was a popular topic for academic papers and somber documentaries. To Hannah, however, it felt more personal. She traced the lines of the human script with a finger on the glass. Their words spoke of deep loneliness, of fierce love for their blue planet, of a desire to reach the stars that was almost painful. She felt a connection to that longing. Her colleague, Min-Soo, did not share this sentiment. He was an astrophysicist assigned to monitor the dead zone for residual spatial anomalies. The hypernova had left scars in spacetime, making navigation dangerous and scientific study important. Where Hannah saw poetry, Min-Soo saw data points and radiation graphs. He was a practical man, his dark hair often messy from running his hands through it while staring at complicated star maps. "More dead words?" Min-Soo asked, walking up to her station with a cup of something steaming. He nodded at her screen. "They're not dead if someone is reading them," Hannah said softly, not looking up. "They're just waiting." Min-Soo sighed. "The only thing waiting out near the collapse zone is a cocktail of gamma radiation and gravitational waves that could tear our ship in half. Sentiment won't change that." "It's not sentiment. It's respect," Hannah replied. She finally looked at him. "They were here. They dreamed. They built. Doesn't that matter?" "It mattered enough for the Confederacy to build a memorial planetoid at the edge of the zone," Min-Soo said, his tone softening slightly. He knew Hannah's passion was genuine. "But it's been 83 standard years, Hannah. The energy signatures are fading. Even the debris field has mostly dissipated. Soon, there will be no physical proof they were ever out there at all." That thought sent a cold pang through Hannah. To be so completely forgotten, to have your entire existence become a faint footnote in alien history books, felt like a second death. She turned back to her poem, a determined set to her jaw. Later, in the monitoring center, Min-Soo scanned the usual reports from the automated probes near the dead zone. Mostly static, mostly background noise. A flicker on his main screen caught his eye. It was a tiny spike in a non-standard energy band. It lasted for less than a second. Probably nothing. Space was full of random emissions. He marked it for review and moved on. An hour later, it happened again. Same coordinates, same brief duration, but the frequency was odd. It wasn't the chaotic ripple of a spacetime tear. It was too clean, too structured, almost like a carrier wave, a signal meant to hold information. His scientific curiosity, always sharp, was now fully awake. He isolated the data and ran a deep analysis, filtering out all known cosmic phenomena. The result made him sit back in his chair, his breath catching. The energy signature, while advanced and strange, had a fundamental harmonic structure that matched pre-collapse human warp technology. But that was impossible. Human tech was crude, all of it destroyed. This was like seeing the shadow of a dinosaur walking down the street. He immediately called Hannah. She arrived, her eyes wide. "What is it?" Probably a glitch, Minsu said, though his voice was tight. But look, he pulled up the spectral analysis. See this wave pattern? The base frequency matches the theoretical models for early human faster-than-light drives. But the modulation on top of it, it's complex. It's not an engine, Hannah. It's more like a cloak, a shield, emitting a controlled echo to mimic background noise. Hannah stared, her mind racing. A cloak? Hiding what? I don't know. But it's coming from the exact epicenter of the supposed Great Collapse. The place where the hypernova energy should have vaporized everything for light years. He zoomed in on the coordinate grid. And it's repeating. Not regularly, but it's there. A heartbeat. A sudden, wild hope flared in Hannah's chest. So bright it was terrifying. Could anyone have survived? Minsu shook his head, the rationalist fighting the evidence. No. Absolutely not. The models are clear. Nothing could survive that. This is just space ghosts, echoes trapped in a fold. It has to be. But he didn't sound convinced. Hannah leaned forward, her voice a whisper. What if the story is wrong? What if the collapse wasn't an accident? Minsu met her gaze. The quiet hum of the monitoring center seemed to grow louder around them. Outside the large viewport, the peaceful lights of the Confederacy space station shone, a testament to order and safety. Out there, in the dark silence of the dead zone, something had just whispered. And for the first time in 83 years, someone was listening. The hope that had sparked in the monitoring center did not fade. It turned into a hard, focused need to know. Hannah and Minsu worked through the night, forgetting sleep. They isolated the strange signal. They cleaned up the data, removing static. Minsu built new filters to listen more deeply to that one patch of empty space. Hannah scoured the old human archives for anything about advanced cloaking or emergency protocols. The official story of the Great Collapse felt thin now, like paper held up to a light.by morning. They had a clearer picture. The signal was not a natural space echo. It was a structured, repeating loop. It pulsed softly every few hours, always from the same point. It was hiding in plain sight, disguised as the faint afterglow of the ancient explosion. Minsu admitted, his voice low with awe, that it was a work of brilliant engineering. To hide something for generations right where everyone believed nothing could exist was more than clever. It was a statement. Hannah's discovery was even more startling. She was comparing the signal's modulation pattern to human cultural databases. She was looking for codes, for mathematics. What she found was music. The rise and fall of the energy pulse, when translated into an auditory frequency, created a distinct melody. It was slow, stretched out over hours and filled with sorrow, but it was recognizable. She called Minsu over, her hands trembling. Listen, she said. She played the melody, speeded up so it fit into a minute. A simple, haunting tune filled the room. Minsu frowned. It's a pattern. What is it? It's a song, Hannah breathed. A very old human song. A folk melody from the Korean peninsula on Earth. It's called Erroring. She pulled up the archive entry on her screen, showing the musical notation and historical photos of humans singing it. It's a song of farewell, of sorrow and longing, but also of resilience. The lyrics talk about a person leaving over a hill, but promising to return. They both stared at the screen, then at the signal graph. The match was undeniable. The hidden thing in the dead zone was humming a human song of parting and promised return. The reality of it crashed over them. This was not debris. This was not a ghost. This was a message, left playing on a loop for decades, waiting for someone to understand. There, Hannah said, the words feeling both impossible and absolutely true. Someone survived. They hid. And they are telling us they remember who they are. Minsu, ever cautious, felt the wall of his skepticism finally crack. The coincidence was too great. The engineering was too perfect. Okay, he said slowly. Let's say you're right. Why now? Why are we just hearing this? And why hasn't the Confederacy's long-range scan network ever picked it up? Because no one was listening for a song, Hannah said simply. They were listening for engine noise, for weapons, for distress signals. Not for a lullaby. We only found it because you were looking at the raw energy, and I was looking at their culture. They compiled their evidence. Minsu's technical analysis of the artificial signal structure, and Hannah's cultural match with the Ararang melody. It was strong, but it was also crazy. They requested an urgent meeting with a senior member of the Confederacy Science Council. The counselor, an elderly being named Olam with smooth gray skin and large, calm eyes, received them in his office. He listened patiently as Minsu presented the data. He looked thoughtfully at Hannah's musical frequency comparison. When they finished, there was a long silence. A fascinating analysis, Olam said, his voice gentle. The correlation is indeed curious. But you must see the more likely explanation. What explanation? Hannah asked, leaning forward. The Great Collapse was the event of immense energy. It is not impossible that the cultural memory of the humans, their art and their music, was in some way imprinted onto the local spacetime field. What you are detecting is a psychic echo, a fossil of feeling. A beautiful and tragic one, but a fossil nonetheless. It is not proof of life. The signal structure is technological, not psychic, Minsu insisted, pointing to his graphs. It's maintaining a field. It's active. Or it is a self-sustaining ripple, like a bell that was struck long ago and has not yet finished ringing. Olam countered kindly. The Council will not authorize a manned mission based on a song and an energy reading that matches no known living technology. The dead zone is still extremely hazardous. To send beings there chasing a ghost would be irresponsible. The dismissal was polite, but it was final. They were thanked for their diligence and asked to return to their regular duties. The hope that had burned so brightly was doused with the cold water of bureaucratic caution. Back in the monitoring center, the silence was heavy. The signal continued to pulse on their screen. A steady, sorrowful heartbeat from the grave. He's wrong, Hannah said quietly, her eyes fixed on the flashing. It's not an echo. It's a beacon. Minsu sat beside her, defeated. It doesn't matter what we believe. Without council authorization, we can't get a ship. We can't go any closer. Hannah turned to look at him. The determination was back in her eyes, fiercer now. We have the scout vessel for routine probe retrieval. The Curiosity. Its range is limited, but it could get to the edge of the signal source. Minsu stared at her. That's a classified ship for assigned missions only. Using it for an unauthorized jump would get us ejected from the Science Corps. Or jailed. What if we're right, Minsu? Hannah's voice was intense. What if humanity is alive in there, waiting? How many more generations should they wait? How long does their song have to play before someone answers? She gestured at the archive data around them. They wrote poems about not being forgotten. They built monuments to say, we were here. This signal, this song, it's the last monument. And Olam wants to call it a fossil and file it away. I can't do that. Minsu looked from her passionate face to the data on the screen. He thought of pure scientific discovery, the chance to rewrite history. He also thought of the very real danger. But the song, the impossible, structured signal wouldn't leave his mind. It was a puzzle, and he needed to solve it. That he let out a long, slow breath. The Curiosity needs a calibration check on its long-range sensors, he said, his voice deliberately flat. It would be standard procedure to take it just outside the station's traffic control zone to run tests, in the general direction of the dead zone. A slow smile spread across Hannah's face. It was not a plan, not really. It was a first, fragile step into the unknown. They would run their tests. They would listen more closely. And perhaps, they would get close enough to finally see what was humming in the dark. The small scout ship, the Curiosity, slipped away from Lyra Prime Station without notice. Its flight plan, filed by Minsu, stated it was conducting standard sensor calibrations in a safe, nearby sector. The lie felt heavy in the quiet cabin. Hannah watched the station lights shrink into a single bright dot, then vanish among the stars. Ahead of them was only the deep black, marked on their navigation screen by a single, pulsing coordinate. Minsu worked at the controls, his face lit by the soft blue glow of the displays. He was quiet, focused on the act of flying. Hannah knew he was wrestling with it. He was a man of rules and procedures, and they were now breaking many of them. She focused on the signal. She had tuned their comms to the strange frequency, and the slow, stretched-out notes of Ararang whispered through the ship's speakers. It was a ghostly sound, a constant reminder of why they were out here. The journey to the edge of the dead zone took hours. As they approached, the environment changed. Space here was not empty. Sensors showed faint, shimmering webs of residual energy, the scars of the old hypernova. Small pieces of dark, twisted metal, cold for decades, tumbled slowly in the void. It was a graveyard. The melancholy song in the background made it feel even more so. "We're at the outer marker," Minsu said, his voice hushed. "The signal source is directly ahead, but it's inside the high-hazard zone. The radiation levels are climbing. The Curiosity's shields can handle it for a short time, but not for long." Hannah nodded, her eyes fixed on the main viewer. It showed empty space, just stars and dust. "Take us in." Slowly, the ship moved forward. The music grew slightly stronger. The static around it lessened. Minsu watched his instruments with rising tension. "The spatial readings are wrong," he muttered. "There's gravitational lensing. Things behind that point are distorted. It's like looking through old glass." "Like a cloak?" Hannah asked. "Like a perfect cloak," Minsu confirmed, awe in his voice. "It's not just hiding something visually. It's bending sensors. It's making that area of space look uninteresting, like background noise. If I wasn't tracking this exact song, I would fly right past it and mark it as nothing." They inched closer. The distortion grew more pronounced. On the viewer, the stars behind a certain invisible line began to smear and twist. Then, without warning, a voice crackled over the official Confederacy channel, making them both jump. "Unidentified scout vessel, this is the Confederacy patrol ship Vigilant. You are entering a restricted hazard zone. Transmit your authorization codes immediately." Hannah and Minsu exchanged a panicked look. This was the military. Minsu quickly opened a channel, trying to keep his voice steady. "Vigilant, this is Science Scout Curiosity, registration Sigma 7. We are on a sensor calibration mission. We have temporary clearance." There was a pause. Then the voice returned, harder now. "Curiosity, your listed flight plan does not extend to the collapse epicenter. This area is prohibited for civilian craft due to extreme subspace instability. You will reverse your course now and return to Lyra Prime for debriefing." On the sensor screen, a new icon appeared, the Vigilant, a sleek, armed patrol vessel, moving to intercept them from the side. They were being cut off. Minsu's hands flew over the controls. "They're ordering us to leave. If we don't, they'll tractor us in." Hannah stared ahead at the shimmering, distorted space. The song of Ararang played on. They were so close. "We can't turn back now. We're right here." "I know," Minsu said, a new determination setting his jaw. He pushed the controls forward. The Curiosity surged ahead, deeper into the hazard zone, straight towards the heart of the distortion. Alarms blared on their console. "Radiation warning. Structural stress alert," the ship's computer announced. "Curiosity, you are in violation of direct orders. Cut your engines or we will disable you." The voice from the Vigilant was angry now. Then, everything happened at once. The Curiosity sensor screamed and then went blank for a split second. The distorted space in front of them didn't just shimmer. It rippled. It was like a stone dropping into a still pond, but the pond was the fabric of reality itself. The ripple spread outwards in a perfect, silent circle. And then, the space simply tore open. It was not a wormhole. It was a vast, jagged window opening sideways into reality. And through it, emerging not from distant stars but from this hidden rip next to them, came the ships. First one, then 10, then hundreds. They were massive, their designs unlike anything in the Confederacy. They were angular and sharp, yet flowing, like knives made of dark water and starlight. They were utterly silent, gliding out of the tier with a terrifying, graceful power. On their hulls, faded but unmistakable, was the old symbol of Earth, a blue circle with white continents. The human fleet filled the space around the tiny Curiosity. The patrol ship Vigilant, which had seemed so imposing a moment before, now looked like a child's toy next to these giants. Its communication channel erupted into confused shouts and static before falling silent, its systems likely overwhelmed by the sheer energy of the fleet's emergence. Hannah could not breathe. She could only stare, one hand pressed to the viewport. The song from the speakers had stopped. In its place was a deep, resonant silence, more powerful than any noise. Minsu was frozen at the helm, every warning light on his panel flashing red. Ignored. They were here, he whispered. The whole time. Right here. The tear in space sealed itself behind the last ship, leaving no trace. The human fleet hung in the void, motionless. They did not power weapons. They did not hail the panicking Vigilant. They simply existed, a sudden, impossible fact in the sky. Then, a single comm signal pinged on the Curiosity's comms. It was a request for a basic, open channel. It was not directed at the powerful patrol ship. It was directed at them, the small, trespassing science vessel. Minsu, his hand shaking, looked at Hannah. She gave a small, stunned nod that he opened the channel. The face that appeared on the screen was human. A man older, with short gray hair and eyes that held the weight of long years. He wore a simple, dark uniform. He looked at them and then he spoke. His voice was clear, and the language was not the common tongue of the Confederacy. It was Korean. Old and formal, but perfectly understandable. "This is Admiral J of the Dandelion Fleet," he said. His eyes moved from Minsu to Hannah, and he gave a slow, small nod, as if acknowledging a long-awaited visitor. "We have been waiting for someone to listen. Please, do not be afraid." For a long moment, there was only silence inside the Curiosity. The face of Admiral J filled their screen. He looked real solid. His expression was serious, but not unkind. The sheer impossibility of it held Hannah and Minsu frozen. The human language, spoken not from a historical recording but from a living person just kilometers away, echoed in the small cabin. Minsu was the first to find his voice, though it came out as a rough whisper. We hear you." He stumbled, then switched to Korean, the language feeling strange and formal on his tongue. "This is Science Scout Curiosity. I am Minsu. This is Hannah." The Admiral's face softened, just a little. "Minsu, Hannah, your names are known to us. We monitored your analysis of the signal. We heard you listening to the song." He paused, letting that sink in. They had not been alone in their vigil. Someone had been watching from the other side of the veil. Hannah found her breath. "You were there? All this time?" "We were," Admiral J said. "The story your Confederacy knows, the Great Collapse, is not a lie. But it is not the whole truth. The catastrophe was real. It was coming. We could not stop it." He spoke slowly, choosing his words with care. "We had a choice. Die with our colonies or use the event. We engineered the hypernova, controlled its blast wave. We used its incredible energy to rip a hole in space, not to escape, but to hide. We created a pocket dimension, a fold in reality. And we went inside." Minsu's scientific mind reeled at the concept. The energy required, the control needed. It was beyond anything he could imagine. "You hid. For generations." "We hid to heal," Jay corrected gently. "To learn. The galaxy we left was young and violent. We were wounded, fractured. We needed time. The dead zone was our shield. Who would look for life in the heart of a tomb?" He glanced to the side, as if checking something on another screen. "Your patrol ship is frightened. Their weapons are powered, but they are not firing. That is good." On their sensor display, Hannah and Minsu could see the Vigilant. It was holding its position, surrounded by the silent, massive human ships. It looked very small. "Why now?" Hannah asked, the question that had driven her finally bursting out. "Why come back now?" Admiral J's expression turned grave. "Because the time for hiding is over. A threat is coming. a threat the Confederacy does not yet see and is not ready to face. Before he could explain, a new, frantic transmission cut in on the Confederacy emergency channel. It was the commander of the Vigilant, his voice tight with fear and authority. Unidentified fleet, you are in restricted space. Identify yourselves with Confederacy protocols immediately or be fired upon. Admiral J sighed, a very human sound of tired patience. He made a small gesture. On the viewer, Hannah and Minsu saw a single, smaller ship detach from the human fleet. It moved towards the Vigilant, not with speed, but with a slow, deliberate grace. It did not raise shields or weapons. The Vigilant's commander shouted a final warning. Then, bright lances of energy shot from the patrol ship, striking the human vessel directly. Hannah gasped. Minsu winced, expecting an explosion. Nothing happened. The energy beams hit the dark hull of the human ship and simply dissipated. They spread out like water hitting stone, flowing harmlessly across the surface before fading away. The human ship did not change its course. It did not fire back. It continued its slow approach, a silent demonstration of impossible power. The Vigilant fell silent. Its weapons powered down. Admiral J turned back to them, as if the brief conflict was a minor distraction. We mean no harm to your people, but we must speak to your leaders. The threat is not military. It is cosmological. What kind of threat? Minsu asked, his scientist's curiosity overriding his shock. We call it the necrosis, Jay said. The word was cold, final. It is a wave of decay, not of matter, but of space-time itself. It originates from a tear between galactic planes. It makes stars grow cold and old in moments. It unravels the fabric that holds reality together. Our long-range scouts detected its approach 5 years ago. It is slow, but it is coming here. Your scientists may have seen its precursor effects. Unexplained star dimming in the outer rim, subspace communication echoes. Minsu's blood ran cold. He had seen those reports. They were filed as curious anomalies, unexplained but not yet threatening. He had thought them insignificant. Your Confederacy's weapons, your shields, are designed for war with other beings, Jay continued. They cannot fight against the unraveling of physics itself. Ours can. We have spent 83 years learning how to mend the fabric of reality. To be weavers, not warriors. We return to warn you and to help. Hannah looked out at the immense, peaceful fleet. They had not come for revenge or for conquest. They had come because they saw a fire on the horizon that no one else could see. They had come to help the people who thought they were gone forever. You need to speak to the council, Hannah said, understanding dawning. We do, Jay agreed. But they see a terrifying, unknown fleet that appeared from a graveyard. They will see a weapon. We need a bridge. We need voices they trust to explain. His eyes held theirs. Will you be our voice? Will you tell them what you have seen and heard? The weight of the request settled on them. They were junior researchers who had stolen a ship. Now they were being asked to speak for an ancient, lost race returning to save the galaxy. Minsu looked at Hannah. She saw the same realization in his eyes. This was bigger than rules, bigger than their careers. This was history. He gave a single, sharp nod. Hannah turned back to the screen, to the face of the man from a forgotten song. We will tell them, she said, her voice steady. We will tell them everything. Admiral J, for the first time, allowed a small, weary smile to touch his lips. It was the smile of a man who had carried a terrible secret for a very long time and had finally found someone to share the burden. Then let us go, he said. The Vigilant will escort us, and you, Curiosity, will fly with us. It is time for humanity to be seen again. The journey back to Lyra Prime was unlike any flight in history. The Curiosity, a tiny speck, flew nestled among the giants of the Dandelion fleet. The Vigilant led the way, its commander no longer giving orders but transmitting urgent, confused reports ahead of them. Hannah and Minsu spent the time preparing. They downloaded all their data, the signal, the song, the sensor readings from the emergence. They composed a statement, trying to find words big enough for what they had witnessed. Admiral J had given them more information. The necrosis was not a fast-moving enemy. It was a creeping tide, altering the fundamental laws of physics in its wake. It made stars decay from the inside out, not with explosions, but with a cold, silent death. Planets in its path didn't shatter. They simply unraveled, their atoms drifting apart like smoke. Our greatest weapons are not bombs, Jay had explained. They are resonators and anchors. They sing reality back into shape. They are tools of healing, built from a science of compassion, not destruction. This was the message they had to convey. It was a difficult one. When they arrived at Lyra Prime, the entire station was on high alert. The normal traffic was gone. Instead, the defensive fleet of the Confederacy was arrayed in a glittering, formidable wall between the station and the approaching humans. It was a breathtaking and terrifying sight. Warships from a dozen different species, their weapons glowing with charge, pointed at the dark, silent human vessels. A priority channel opened to the Curiosity. It was Counselor Olam, his usually calm face tight with strain. Minsu, Hannah, explain this. Immediately, Minsu transmitted their full data packet. Counselor, everything is in the files. The signal was not an echo. It was a beacon. The humans survived. They hid to protect themselves, and now they have returned to protect us all from a threat we cannot see. A convenient story from an armada that appears from a place of death, snapped another voice. A new face appeared on the screen, Commander Kale of the Confederacy Defense Force. His features were sharp, his eyes distrustful. They engineered their own supposed destruction. They hid for generations. And now they appear at our doorstep with a fairy tale about a cosmic disaster? This is a trick. A prelude to invasion. They could have invaded already, Hannah said, her voice clear despite her fear. The Vigilant fired on them. Their ship did not even notice. They have power we cannot fight, Commander. And they are not fighting. That is what makes them even more dangerous. Kale shot back. They are trying to lull us, to make us lower our guard. Admiral J's face appeared in a separate window on the comm screen. He had been listening. Commander, Counselor, we understand your fear. We anticipated it. We do not ask you to lower your defenses. We ask only for a chance to prove our words. Let us demonstrate our purpose. Demonstrate how? Olam asked, his scientific mind curious despite the tension. The necrosis is nearer than you know, Jay said. Your long-range scans of the star system GT77b in the fringe sectors will show abnormal decay in its sun. Your science will call it a rare stellar event. We know it is the first touch of the wave. Give us permission to go there. Let us show you what our technology can do. Let us try to heal the star. Commander Kale laughed, a harsh sound. You want us to let your entire war fleet travel to a distant star system? Absolutely not. This is a tactical ploy to get behind our lines. Then let a single ship go, Hannah pleaded. Just one. Let Admiral J send one of his vessels, escorted by your own fleet. Let them prove it. A tense silence filled the channel. The commanders and counselors were arguing, their voices muffled. Finally, Olam spoke. A compromise. Admiral J, you may send one vessel. No escort. It will go alone, monitored by our long-range probes. If this is a trick, you will be too far from your fleet for support. If you are telling the truth, we will see. It was a test. A dangerous one. Admiral J did not hesitate. Agreed. The ship Steadfast will depart immediately. It will transmit all its data to you openly. You will see everything. On the viewer, a single, graceful ship separated from the human fleet. It was larger than the Vigilant, but still just one vessel against the unknown. It turned and, without a word, shot into warp speed, heading for the distant, dying star. The wait began. Hours passed. The standoff at Lyra Prime continued, a silent battle of nerves. Hannah and Minsu stayed on the bridge of the Curiosity, watching the feed from the Confederacy's observation probes. The image of the star GT77b appeared. Even to the naked eye, something was wrong. It was a sickly orange, pulsing unevenly. The data scroll showed its core temperature plummeting, its light output fading. It was, as Jay had said, dying not with a bang, but a whimper. The Steadfast arrived. It did not take a battle position. It moved close to the star, dangerously close. Then it began to unfold. Panels opened on its hull, revealing intricate patterns of crystal and light. It began to emit a pulse, not of sound, but of something deeper, a vibration that made the very light from the probes shimmer. "What is it doing?" Commander Kale muttered. "Watching?" "It's singing?" Hannah whispered, remembering Jay's words. The pulse from the Steadfast washed over the star. For a long time, nothing changed. The star continued to fade. Doubt began to spread on the command channel. Then, the decay stopped. The star's light steadied. The sickly orange hue began to warm, slowly turning back towards a healthy yellow. The data stream showed the impossible. The core temperature was rising. The unraveling was being stitched back together. A collective gasp seemed to go through the Confederacy command. It was not a weapon. It was medicine on a stellar scale. Then, disaster. A huge wave of dark energy, visible as a ripple of wrongness in space, erupted from the far side of the star. The leading edge of the necrosis, hidden until now, is slammed into the Steadfast. The human ship's lights flickered violently. On the comms, a calm human voice from the ship said, "Anchoring field destabilized. The wave is stronger here than projected. Implementing stabilizing protocol." The Steadfast did not retreat. Instead, it drove itself deeper into the decaying region, its pulse becoming blindingly bright. It was throwing all its power into holding the tear in reality closed, like a doctor using their own body to stem a flood. The star continued to heal. Its light grew stronger. The Steadfast's light began to fail. Then the transmission ended. The probe feeds showed the star, shining steadily, alive. Floating near it were scattered, dark pieces of debris. All that remained of the Steadfast on the bridge of the Curiosity. The silence was absolute. On the command channel, no one spoke. Admiral Jay's voice was the one to break it, heavy with grief but firm with resolve. The Steadfast has fallen. Its crew has given their lives. The star GT-77b and the 3 inhabited worlds in its system will live. This is the enemy we face, and this is why we are here. We did not come to fight you. We came to fight for you. He paused, letting the truth of the sacrifice sink into every listening heart. "The question now," he said, his voice echoing in the stunned silence, "is will you let us?" The silence that followed Admiral Jay's words was deep and heavy. On the command channel, no one spoke. The images on the screen were undeniable. A healthy, stable star, and the silent debris of the ship that had saved it. The sacrifice was not a theory in a report. It was cold, hard fact floating in the void. A human crew had just died to save alien worlds they had never known. Commander Kale was the first to break the silence. His voice was different now. The sharp edge of suspicion was gone, replaced by a stunned, grudging respect. "Your vessel, it did not attempt to escape." "Escape was not the mission," Admiral Jay replied, his tone steady but weary. "The mission was to anchor the reality field. To do that, the Steadfast had to become part of the field itself. The crew knew the risk." Counselor Olam's face reappeared, his large eyes wide with a new understanding. "You used your ship as a bandage for space-time itself." "Yes," Jay said. "We have many such ships, but the necrosis wave is vast. We cannot stop it alone. We need to coordinate with your scientists to map its advance, to place our anchors where they will do the most good. We need to work together." The mood on the Confederacy command channel had shifted completely. The wall of warships still hung in space, but their weapon lights were now dimming, one by one. The fear of invasion had been replaced by the chilling understanding of a larger, stranger war. "What do you need from us, Admiral?" Olam asked. "First, trust enough to let our science teams meet with yours. Second, full access to your deep space sensor networks to track the necrosis with precision. The wave is not uniform. It has weak points, tiers we can mend before they grow. We need data to find them. Commander Kale cleared his throat. Your fleet. It will remain here? It will, Jay confirmed. We are not seeking military positions. Only a place to coordinate. One of our smaller science vessels can dock with Lyra Prime. Our people can meet with yours face to face. The proposal was a huge step. Letting a human ship dock at the heart of the Confederacy was a gesture of immense trust. But the humans had just offered a greater gesture. The lives of their crew. Olam looked to his fellow counselors, their images flickering in agreement. Permission granted. We will prepare a docking bay. Your science team is welcome. The order was given. The stand down was official. The defensive fleet began to move, not to attack, but to create a peaceful corridor. The change was visible from the viewport of the Curiosity. Hannah let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding for days. It's really happening, Minsu said softly, watching as a sleek, needle-like human ship separated from the main fleet and began its careful approach towards the station. The next hours were a blur of organized chaos. Hannah and Minsu were suddenly important. They were asked to be part of the first contact team, their experience as the first to make contact making them invaluable. They stood in the grand docking bay of Lyra Prime, surrounded by Confederacy officials, scientists, and a tense security detail. The airlock doors opened with a soft hiss. The humans who walked out were not what many expected. They weren't towering warriors in powered armor. They looked ordinary. They wore simple, dark blue uniforms. They were of different ages. Some had kind eyes, some looked wary. They moved with a quiet purpose. At their head was a woman, her hair streaked with gray, with a calm and intelligent face. She introduced herself as Dr. Un. She greeted Olam and the others with a polite nod. Then her eyes found Hannah and Minsu. A small, genuine smile touched her lips. She walked over to them and, to their shock, she bowed slightly, a traditional Korean greeting. Hannah, Minsu. Thank you, she said in their language. Your courage in listening to an old song. It brought us home. We have heard much about you. Hannah was too moved to speak. Minsu managed a bow in return. We just wanted to know the truth. And now we all must face it together, Dr. Un said. She turned to the assembled crowd, switching to the common tongue. Shall we begin? We have much to discuss, and time is the one thing the necrosis does not give us. The meetings started immediately. In the strategy rooms, human and alien scientists huddled over star maps. The humans shared their terrifyingly detailed models of the necrosis wave. The Confederacy scientists shared their vast network of sensor data. Seeing the two datasets combined was a revelation. The curious anomalies Minsu had seen now formed a clear, terrifying pattern. A dark bruise spreading across the galaxy's edge. The human technology was explained. It was not about energy output, but about resonance. Like a singer finding the exact note to shatter a glass. Their anchors found the frequency of stable spacetime and reinforced it. Fighting the necrosis was an act of cosmic healing. A delicate, dangerous procedure. Hannah worked with linguists and historians, helping to translate not just languages, but contexts. She saw the hunger in the human historians' eyes as they accessed the Confederacy's archives about human history, the story of their own death. She saw the pain there, but also a profound relief. They were no longer a memory. They were present. Days turned into a week. A plan began to form. The wave's next major target was a system called Kartol, home to 1 billion beings. The necrosis was already touching its star. The humans proposed a massive, coordinated operation. 6 of their anchor ships, supported by Confederacy vessels handling logistics and shielding, would try to stabilize the star. It would be the first true battle of the war. Not a war of conquest, but a war against entropy itself. On the eve of the operation, Hannah found Minsu in the observation deck, looking out at the human fleet, now a permanent, peaceful constellation near the station. It's strange, Minsu said. We spent our careers studying the past. And now, we're helping to build a future no one could have imagined. Hannah nodded, watching the gentle lights of the human ships. They didn't come back for glory. They came back because it was the right thing to do. They spent generations learning how to fix things, just in case they were needed. She thought of the song, Ararang, a song of sorrowful return. They kept their promise. The next day, the combined fleet would jump to Kartol. The galaxy would hold its breath. But for tonight, there was a fragile, hard-won peace, and the quiet hum of preparation. The vanished had returned, not as conquerors, but as guardians. And for the first time since seeing that first signal, Hannah felt not anxiety, but hope. The combined fleet arrived at the edge of the Kartol system. The sight was worse than the data had suggested. The star, a vibrant yellow sun just weeks before, was now a murky, pulsating amber. Long, dark tendrils, like cracks in reality, swam across its surface. The light it gave was sickly and cold, already causing the outer planets to glaze over with premature frost. Panic transmissions from the populated inner worlds flooded the comms. A chorus of fear from billions. Admiral J's voice was calm on the shared command channel. All units, assume formation Delta. Confederacy shield ships, move to these coordinates. Create the buffer zone. Anchor vessels, you know your positions. This will be harder than GT-77B. The tear is wider here. The Confederacy ships, designed for war, now performed a new function. They moved in unison, their powerful deflector shields linking together to form a giant, shimmering umbrella between the Necrosis wave and the human anchor ships. It would not stop the decay, but it would blunt its force, buying the humans time. The 6 human anchor ships, including Admiral J's flagship, the Resolve, moved forward. They took up positions around the dying star, like healers surrounding a patient. On the bridge of the command ship, Hannah and Minsu watched, their roles now as observers and liaisons. They saw the focused faces of the human crew on the screens, working with a quiet urgency. Beginning resonance sequence, Jay said. The anchor ships began to hum. It was a sound felt in the bones more than heard with ears. On the viewers, brilliant threads of blue-white light erupted from each ship, not shooting into the star, but weaving together around it. They were creating a complex, singing net of energy, a scaffold of stable physics around the unstable star. For a while, it seemed to work. The star's dark pulses slowed. The amber light brightened a fraction. A tense hope flickered through the fleet. Then, the Necrosis wave fought back. From the deepest crack on the star, a surge of null energy exploded outward. It wasn't fire or radiation. It was the absence of those things. A wave of unmaking .3 Confederacy shield ships taking the direct brunt flickered and went dark. Their systems scrambled, falling back silently. The protective umbrella wavered. On the Resolve. Alarms blared. Resonance net destabilizing. Anchor 3 and 4 losing coherence. A human officer called out. Admiral J didn't hesitate. All power to the net. Reinforce the weave. He turned to his communication officer. Order Anchor 5 to move to Sector 7 Gamma. It must fill the gap. But Anchor 5 was struggling, its own light flickering under the null energy surge. The net was fraying. The star began to dim again, the dark tendrils growing thicker, reaching out towards the populated third planet. Minsu watched the data stream, his mind racing. The resonance frequency is off. The star's core collapse is altering its base quantum signature. The net is singing the wrong note. Hannah relayed this immediately to Dr. Un on the Science Channel. The human scientists already knew. We see it. Recalibrating. Dr. Un's voice was strained. But recalibration took time. The star was dying now in fast motion. They were losing. Admiral J stood up from his command chair. His face was a mask of grim resolve. He made a decision. Anchor 2, Anchor 6, lock onto my signal. We are going to manual override. We will physically anchor the net at the rupture point. A young human comms officer looked up, her face pale. Sir, that is within the stellar corona. The tidal forces, the radiation. It is the only way to hold the pattern long enough for the recalibration to complete, Jay said, his voice leaving no room for argument. The Resolve, Anchor 2, and Anchor 6 will advance. The rest will hold the pattern from here. The three ships broke from their positions and dove toward the star, heading straight for the largest, darkest tear. The null energy washed over them. Their lights flickered violently, but they pushed forward, deep into the hellish glow of the star's outer atmosphere. From a distance, it looked like three tiny birds flying into a furnace. They reached the coordinates. Deploying physical anchors now. Jay's voice crackled over the comms. From the bellies of the three ships, massive crystalline spikes fired out, driving themselves into the very fabric of the raging star. The ships themselves shuddered, holding position. The dying net of light suddenly snapped taut, stabilized by these three brave, terrible points. Recalibration at 80%. Dr. Un shouted. On the resolve. The shuddering became a violent shake. Console exploded in sparks. Hull integrity failing, an officer yelled. Hold position, Jay commanded. Hannah watched, her hand over her mouth. Minsu gripped the edge of his console, his knuckles white. The entire fleet watched as the three ships burned, holding the line. Recalibration complete. New resonance pattern engaging. The voice from science team was triumphant that a new, stronger hum pulsed through space. The net of light glowed with a brilliant, clean blue. The dark tendrils on the star recoiled, then began to shrink. The star's light warmed, turning from amber back to yellow. The unraveling was not just stopped, it was being reversed. The sacrifice had worked, but the cost was visible. Anchor 2 and Anchor 6, their hulls glowing with heat damage, were pulling back slowly. The resolve was not moving. Admiral J, please respond, the comms officer said, her voice tight. The screen showing the resolve's bridge was filled with smoke and flashing red lights. Admiral J was back in his chair, breathing heavily. He looked at the viewer, right at Hannah and Min Su, as if he could see them. The anchor is holding, he said, his voice rough but clear. The star is stable. Get the other ships to safety. The resolve will remain at its post a little longer, to ensure the seal is permanent. They all understood. The ship was too damaged. It had given everything. It would now become a permanent part of the anchor, a monument fused into the star it saved. Jay gave one last, small nod. Tell them, tell everyone, we are home. The transmission ended. The resolve, its duty done, became still. Its lights went out. Along with the two other anchors it had fired, it became a silent, permanent guardian within the now healthy star of Kartol. The operation was over. The system was saved. The battle was won. There was no cheering on the command channel, only a deep, respectful silence, thick with grief and awe. Weeks later, the memorial service was held on Lyra Prime. It was for the crews of the Steadfast, the Resolve, and all who were lost. Admiral J's last words were played. The song Ararang was sung, this time not as a lonely beacon, but as a hymn of remembrance by 1,000 different voices. After the service, Hannah and Minsu stood again in the observation deck. The human fleet was still there, but it was different now. It was no longer a hidden mystery. It was part of the galaxy's defense force. Human and Confederacy ships now patrolled together, their designs side by side. Hannah looked at the stars, no longer seeing empty, silent graves, but possibilities. They didn't just come back to fix what was broken, she said softly. They came back to show us how to fix it. Minsu nodded. We thought the F in HFY stood for fighting, for being the toughest. But for them, it stands for fixing, for facing the dark and choosing to mend it. Below them, on the station, beings of 100 species worked alongside humans. The story of humanity was no longer a tragedy. It was a lesson in patience, in sacrifice, and in the quiet, unwavering decision to come home, not for glory, but to help. The galaxy had learned a new definition of strength. And somewhere in the heart of the Kartol star, a silent ship kept its watch, a promise finally and completely fulfilled.